All right, we are officially live. What is up, YouTube fam? Chaz here with Side Hustle Pros. Special guest tonight, which I'm excited about because I don't ever like to actually talk about the taxes and stuff because I get hit up like 100 times a week about dealing with taxes and accounting and all that kind of stuff. And while I do have my own methods to doing my business and the taxes and accounting and all that stuff, I'm not a certified professional. So therefore, I do not talk about it on my channel. But this guy does, and he is a certified professional. So we brought him on the channel, which I'm excited about. Mark Tew, it's Tew from Not Your Dad's CPA. Hit him up on Instagram. Are you doing YouTube this year?
I have not yet made that plunge.
Okay. Well, when he does, we'll give him a plug. So you guys go hop over to his Instagram for now. Follow his content there. I love the fact that you're doing pretty much daily Q&A sessions through your stories mode. That's been super helpful just to be able to watch those. And it's just the little questions that people think about that you're able to go in there and answer. And it's just great. So I'm happy to introduce Mark to the channel, to you guys, because he is a professional that does this. And he's not just, here's the thing, he's not just a CPA that knows a little bit about Amazon and eBay and online sales. He is a seller himself. So he goes through the daily purchasing and selling and then documenting and all that kind of stuff on the back end. Because a lot of CPAs out there, they might know of online sales, they might know of Amazon, but they don't quite get it 100%. So the fact that Mark is actually a seller himself is a huge plus in my book. So Mark, thank you for coming on. Quick audio check, because this is a new setup that I got. I finally upgraded. I got dual monitors, as you guys saw in my last video. I'm using the mic with a different audio setup, so I'm really hoping we don't have feedback right now. If we do, let me know. And I do want to apologize up front. We're in the middle of like getting rid of a bunch of stuff, so this is all death pile, like donation pile. It is chaos in here. I'm going to Utah for the next week, and then I'll be back home. This place is getting deep clean. It's going to look nice and crisp. All right, sweet. So it looks like no feedback, no echoing. If at any point we do get echoing or anything at all, please let me know. I can pop some headphones in to prevent that from happening. So aside from that, I think what we're going to do is let's go through. We'll cover the basics because there's a lot of like, especially Mark knows this. There's a lot of the basic repeated questions every single week that I'm sure you get. So we'll cover the foundation of dealing with accounting and taxes in the online retail world. And then towards the end, we can take as much Q&A as we have time for. So aside from that, Mark, it is over to you, my friend. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Where do we even start with this, right? Like, okay, I sign up. I'm brand new to selling on eBay or Amazon or Poshmark or Mercari. They're all basically treated similar. Where do we start with what people need to know about accounting and taxes with online sales? If they're brand spanking new, they're going to treat it like a hobby, maybe a couple $100 per month in sales per month to start out with, and they want to work their way to a couple $1,000s per month. What advice or common questions do you typically deal with on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to start out, like two thoughts are: don't put off the accounting and accounting for all that stuff and taxes. And the other thought is, if you do put it off, which a lot of people do, don't panic. That's probably the main question I get is, they say, hey, I started selling just as a hobby, and then it really picked up, and I think I'm gonna, really try and make this go somewhere, but I haven't been tracking anything. Everything's a mess. What should I do? So ideally, if you are starting out and you do have the chance to set up things correctly, you want to make sure that you're separating your business from your personal. Like that's probably the biggest thing, the most helpful tip I can give somebody starting out is just to make sure that you have that separation. And the easiest way to do that is by just getting a business bank account and ideally having those transactions imported into some type of bookkeeping software. But even if you don't have the bookkeeping software, just start with that separate account, and that'll make things a lot easier going forward.
And with that separate account, because I know a lot of people, I get asked this oftentimes, they're like, I want to open up a business account, but you can't just roll into a bank. Like, my name's Charles Leslie, I want to open a business account, right? They're not going to do it under my personal name as like sole proprietor. So do you want to cover just like obviously there's three main business entities. So do you want to cover what people need to go into a bank to open up that business account?
Yeah, and it might vary a little bit from bank to bank,
Mm-hmm.
but from what I've seen, the one thing that some people don't realize is that you can often open a business bank account even as a sole proprietor, but they'll probably want to see an EIN, so you can get an employee identification number, oh shoot, I'm forgetting now, employer identification number. Um, an EIN is optional for a sole proprietorship, but you can get one. So if you want to open a bank account as a sole proprietor, you can go get that. And then the other thing is the sole proprietorship, like there's no legal distinction between the entity and you as a person. So if you do open that business bank account, it's probably going to have to be in your own name. So you'll have to be doing business in your own name unless you get a DBA, which allows you to have that sole proprietorship and do business under a different name, doing business as something else. So in that case, they'll want to see that too. That's for a sole proprietor. And then usually the next step after that is an LLC, a limited liability company. And one thing a lot of people don't realize is there's no real tax benefit of having an LLC above having a sole proprietorship. They're basically taxed the same. And the main benefit of having an LLC is just that extra liability protection that you get. So you get extra liability protection, and then it may be easier to do business because you'll look more legitimate. It might be easier just to get that bank account, to get register for a reseller certificate and all that kind of stuff.
I think especially this year, a lot of people are wanting to transition. Maybe they're doing a lot of retail and online arbitrage. That's our situation. We've done a lot of retail and online arbitrage in 2017, 18. This year, we want to switch a lot more into wholesale, and a lot of wholesalers are going to require that information too. It's extremely difficult. Some will, but it's extremely difficult to go to a company and present yourself as just a sole proprietor working out of your garage or your spare bedroom and try to open up a wholesale account. They're going to want to see that you're a legit business, and just taking those extra steps. And a lot of it you can get done in a couple hours tops, right? A lot of it is it's all boring stuff, right? There's special people in this world like Mark, and we love them. That's why they're here, because they love doing that type of work. But it's a lot of boring stuff typically that we don't want to do and take care of. But if you just take half a day or a couple hours and just do that stuff and get your foundation built, it's really going to help you out.
Yeah, totally. So sometimes the next step after having the LLC would be electing to have your LLC taxed as an S Corp. So an S Corp, so I've had a few clients who, right when they go into business, they're like, oh, somebody told me I had to make an S Corp because it's better. So they do that right from the beginning. And that's probably not what you want to do, just because it requires more paperwork. It's more cost intensive, like the taxes are going to be more expensive, just the legal stuff. So it does save you money at a certain point. You just want to be sure you're making enough money where it's going to more than offset the extra cost that you're going to incur from forming that S Corp, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you usually shouldn't start thinking about it before you're netting, at least $30,000. And that's not a hard rule. That's just kind of a ballpark threshold.
Yeah, it makes sense. And the thing because I know, especially if you're brand new, a lot of this is just going to be like, what? Yeah. Talk to your local CPA, or if you have a CPA, like they can walk you through a lot of that stuff. That's what we hire these guys for. Like everyone always asks me about taxes, and I tell them I don't know how it works. I give whatever my CPA tells me to give him. I give him all of it, and I don't know how it gets done. It's just he tells me how much I owe, I don't get a whole lot back these days, but he just tells me how much I owe at the end of the year, or now quarterly, of course, is a different conversation too. And then one person's got a question about, this is a really good one too. And this is completely going to be open Q&A for you guys too. So you can just drop questions in the comments. We want to make sure like in this hour session, you guys are pretty crystal clear, as clear as you can be on all your questions. So all the gray area tax stuff that none of us really know much about, this guy does. So drop them in the comment below. So question is, almost all of the stuff I sold last year was my personal stuff. Do I need to pay taxes on those items if they were personal?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it depends if, I mean, a lot of times when you sell your personal items, you're selling them at a loss. So you don't pay taxes if you incur a loss. But if you're selling it in conjunction with all your inventory that you're buying, that'll actually help you a little bit, because those losses will help to offset the gains. So it should end up being more beneficial.
Here's another really good one for you too. I created my LLC in August. How do I file my tax return for the business for the whole year? Is there a separate form I have to fill out for the business done between August and December?
That is a good question. I mean, if they formed a single member LLC, that's what the IRS refers to as a disregarded entity. That just basically means they treat it the same as they treat a sole proprietorship, meaning that it's filed on the Schedule C of your personal tax return. So whether you have a sole proprietorship or a single member LLC, they're both filed on the same form. So I don't think you need two separate forms, because there's really no difference in how they're taxed. So you just put the whole year on that same form.
And I can actually back that up too, because that's what happened in our situation when we formed our LLC. It was almost the same thing. It was in the middle of a year. And Schedule C is something I had to learn about real quick. So yeah, it was all put on the same form and treated the same for the whole year. All right, so let's move forward with, they sign up, they understand business account, they're going to treat this thing separately. And I give that piece of advice all day long, every video I can, because that was the biggest mistake we made, was we did not reinvest 100% out of the gate, which is why we had slow growth, especially in the beginning. So I wish I can go back and fix that part and just keep it separate from our personal funds and reinvest it 100%. So what are some of the other common things that you believe people should have at least a basic understanding of when it comes to the whole accounting and taxing side?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people start selling and reselling on the side as a side job, and they might have their full-time job, or be a stay-at-home parent or whatever. And so a lot of times they're not expecting the additional taxes, the additional self-employment tax. So I mean, when you have a W-2 job, you're having income tax withheld, you're paying Social Security and Medicare. But what a lot of people don't realize is that your employer is paying an equal portion of that Social Security and Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
So when you become self-employed, all of a sudden you're going to be paying both of those portions. You're basically going to be paying double, and that whole thing is what the self-employment tax is. And a lot of people aren't expecting that tax bill. And on top of that, they don't realize that you need to be paying throughout the year potentially. So then at the end of the year, you're hit with this big tax bill, and you might owe penalties too for not having paid throughout the year.
And I'm just looking at some notes here that I jotted down as well. I want to try to cover, like, obviously there's so much depth to all this stuff, guys, but we want to make sure that we cover a little bit of each little topic. And then if you want more specific questions, that's what the chat's for. So self-employment tax, you covered that one. Another big one too, that I had to learn about was quarterly taxes. Like what is the purpose of doing quarterly taxes? Are they required? Do you want to touch a little bit on each of those?
Yeah, so I mean, so when you have a W-2 job, like a normal job, I say your employer is withholding your federal income tax from your paycheck every 2 weeks or every month or however often you get paid. So when we become self-employed, the IRS expects the same thing from us, basically. So if we're making over a certain amount, or if we're going to owe over a certain amount, they would like us to pay that on a quarterly basis. So, I mean, the simple rule there is if you plan to owe over $1,000 in tax at the end of the year, after everything you've already withheld, then you should be paying that quarterly. So there's a couple other rules too, but that's the one that's most relevant for a lot of people who are starting out. So a lot of people who are starting out, you know, they might have a loss or just have, you know, netted a few $100s. In that case, you don't need to worry about estimated taxes.
We made that transition. I can tell you guys, it may suck to write that check, or you can pay them online now, but it may suck to pay that every quarter, right? It feels like a bill every quarter, but it's a lot easier to bite that smaller chunk every 3 months than it is to, at the end of the year, get one fat bill. It's a lot more tolerable to do it that way.
Yeah.
And if you end up paying more, right, you get that chunk back at the end of the year once everything's done too. And that's why they're called estimated taxes.
Right.
Of course, this one's going to be brought up. So let's get into the nitty gritty, right? Because it's kind of like one big umbrella. But when it comes to individual states, right, get into like the sales tax in different states topic. Somebody asked, do you need to register as a business in every state that you have Amazon storage? That gets into something called Nexus. If you don't know about that, I'm sure Mark is more than thrilled to cover that one. That's probably the biggest like gray area in all of online world, is getting into sales tax, especially with where we're at right now. A lot of crazy stuff going on, and there's just been big switches going on with government stuff and what they're requiring from states now.
It is a gray area. But I mean, the basic idea is, well, yeah, on a basic level, like you should be collecting and remitting sales tax for any sales that you have in a place where you have a physical presence. So that's usually just our home state. You know, if I operate out of Nevada and I have a sale in Nevada, I should be collecting sales tax for all those sales and, you know, eventually sending those to the Nevada Sales Tax Commission or whoever they are. So the thing there is, if you sell on Amazon and you have inventory stored in a fulfillment warehouse in another state and you make a sale in that state, technically, based on those physical Nexus rules, you would be required to collect sales tax for that too. And the thing that's hard is a lot of people, I mean, have no idea where their stuff is stored, and Amazon doesn't make it easy either.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but regardless of whether you collect the sales tax or not, the state's going to still want you to pay it. So that's, I mean, that's a whole another issue right there. So that's physical Nexus. And then with this recent Supreme Court ruling last year, they introduced this concept of economic Nexus. So now, even if you don't have a physical presence in another state, if you exceed a certain threshold of transactions or sales volume, they can require you to collect and remit sales to that state as well. So yeah, that's just a whole nother thing. And I could send you a link of a good place where it goes through each state and says what those thresholds are right now.
Okay, yeah, that'd be handy info to have. And I was trying to remember off the top of my head. I just went to a meeting up at eBay headquarters. They had one of their execs fly out, and he was covering that one of eBay's goals is to be able to handle every single state and every single sales tax junk that you have to go through. And that's almost word for word. Yeah. So that's their main goal. Of course, don't quote me on it. I'm just paying forward what info I was given, but that's something eBay is actively working on. And it's something Amazon's already started doing as well. Amazon in certain states already is starting to automatically collect that tax on your behalf. So you really don't have to even worry about that. And there's, I forgot what the updated list is, but there's a chunk of states that are going through that right now.
Yeah. And that's always been my theory, because it's such a mess out there. Mm-hmm. And I mean, almost nobody, well, I'm not going to say that. There's a lot of people who don't pay sales tax anyway. and these states aren't going to have any luck trying to come after these people. They just don't have the resources. So eventually, it's going to be all Amazon, eBay. These platforms are be forced eventually to do it all.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really crossing my fingers for that on the eBay side, because that's something that we heard from eBay corporate on a one-on-one level. So I'm not exactly sure if I was supposed to share that live on a YouTube channel, but just so you guys know what's coming up this year. No one run to him. First time seller, my question is, what do you need to keep track of when doing RA, OA for the end of year taxes? I love that's like, I just read that as like 2 or 3 different topics in one little question too. So I think the first part of that is basic accounting. Like a lot of people, including myself, we go to garage sales, estate sales, stuff where we don't have receipts. So I go and I buy, I don't have anything cool next to me. Well, yeah, I got these AirPods. I buy these AirPods at an estate sale for $50. And I say, I'm going to sell these for $100 on eBay. What's the basic method for me to be able to track my cost of goods and when it sells and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, I mean, at a most basic level for beginner, I would just have a spreadsheet where you list what the item is, the date you purchased it, how much it cost, and then when you sell it, you'll record the sales price and the sales date. And then just with those 5 things, with that information, you'll be able to calculate your cost of goods sold pretty easily for any given month and for the entire year.
And please take my advice on this one from firsthand experience, guys. Do not wait until 6 months down the road to think, wow, I should probably go back and start doing that for 6 months worth of sales. It takes days. Like, I'm not talking like 5 or 6 hour days. I'm talking like 12-hour days of going back and going through every single sale that you've made and backtracking all those cost of goods. I've made it a personal habit to every single week this year. I'm sitting down every Sunday night or Monday morning, and I go through my whole week of sales, and I go through and do that. And then, of course, that's if you're doing it manually. And then I'm sure you could touch base on QuickBooks, GoDaddy bookkeeping. These are softwares that can automatically pull your eBay data for you and sync with your bank account, so you can mess around with the different stuff there. Do you have a preference between the two, or do you find there's differences? Or are they pretty much the same?
It depends. So like with a lot of people like GoDaddy bookkeeping just because it's so simple. It integrates pretty nicely with eBay. So for that reason, I like it. The reason I may not recommend it always is because it doesn't have capability to like manage your assets and your liabilities, like your inventory, your bank accounts, your balance sheet would be the accounting term. And that's the same with QuickBooks Self-Employed. Those 2 programs are similar in that way. But then when we're talking about QuickBooks Online, they have a few different packages within QuickBooks Online. Those are a bit more robust. They can do a lot more reporting. But at the same time, it can overwhelm a lot of people. But again, it just depends on the comfort level of the person and how far they're wanting to take their business.
So let's say somebody in the chat right now is newer to this, but they want to start treating it more like an actual business, not a hobby. They go on to QuickBooks.com, for example. What's the basic one you would recommend? Because they have they have self-employed, online. They have these different ones. Is there one that you would recommend somebody start with that's both going to be affordable and it's going to be able to do all of the tracking that it needs to be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, if you want really simple, you could do QuickBooks Self-Employed, but that's really designed for people who are still, combining their business with their personal. It's really designed to help you prepare your tax return. So I like QuickBooks Online, the Simple Start package, because that has a lot more capabilities. It's all about tracking your profitability and being able to look at your business that way. So that's probably the one I would recommend for someone who wants to be serious.
Okay, awesome. And I'm trying to cover as much of like the basics for you guys too, because these are questions I had I remember when I first started, because we were using our personal checking account, which was just one account between my wife and I. So we were mixing the personal funds and the business fund. We did all the wrong things, right? That's why we do things better now, because we did the wrong things for a while. So we were mixing and matching those. I was doing everything on just a physical Excel sheet. And then I found out about QuickBooks and GoDaddy bookkeeping. So I played around with both of those. And these were all questions I had in the beginning. Is like, which one do you do? What's the difference? So we're trying to clear as much of that up for you guys. So any questions you have on should we do this or that, drop them in the chat and we'll keep chugging along this little session for you. Somebody asked, can you provide an example of how cost of goods works?
Yeah, that's another sort of gray area these days, but up until the recent tax law, for retailers, it was pretty conclusive. I don't know if that's the word. That when you buy inventory, you record that inventory as an asset. Like it sits on your business books as an asset, and you don't deduct it. You don't deduct that expense. But then when you sell it, that's when you can take the deduction upon the sale. And that's when you recognize your cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is just a specific name for a certain type of deduction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it's always been. But now with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it introduces some language that loosens up these rules for inventory. And some people would argue that it means that you can deduct your inventory when you purchase it. But it's not that simple. It depends on some other things. But that option is potentially there if you want to go explore it. I have a blog post.
It's into more of the gray option. It's like you can technically do it, but
I would still recommend going the cost of goods sold route. Deduct it when you sell it, because it gives you it matches up your revenues to your expenses so much better, and you can get so much more insight into your profitability.
Yeah, you really can. And we use Inventory Lab for Amazon. It's exactly how it works with Inventory Lab. Once you sell something, that's when your cost of goods is then deducted as an expense. So I personally am a big fan of that method too. Actually, I forgot the second half of where I was going with this last question. What do you need to keep track of ROI, end of year taxes? So that was my other part of that last question too was, so that's kind of an overview, guys, of how we're working with keeping track, the basic accounting methods. If you guys have any more accounting questions, just drop those below too. Second half of that question too is like end of year taxes. Are there certain reports that are done with Amazon and eBay for end of year stuff? I know Inventory Lab I'm a big fan of Inventory Lab for Amazon because it does all of this. It syncs up with all your stuff, cost of goods, and there's reports you can print off at the end of the year for your CPA. And on that same note, do you want to cover the basics for those that don't know about 1099s that Amazon and eBay? I don't do Poshmark. I'm assuming they're the same way. They send out a 1099 if there's a certain amount of sales made. And that was 20K in sales is when they'll send that out. And I know with that level too, you've probably heard the like misconception about the $600 threshold and all that fun stuff. So if you want to cover the basics of that too, that'd be great.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
There's a lot of it there.
I'll start with the 1099 miss, MISC. So that's what you receive as an independent contractor when you've earned more than $600 doing any type of work for a business. And as a business, as an employer, if you're hiring designers or somebody to come take your photos or something, and you pay them more than $600 during the year, technically you're supposed to send them a 1099 to them and the IRS. So that's one thing. So the other thing, and maybe more relevant, is the 1099K, and that's what the payment processors like PayPal and Amazon will send you if you've sold over $20,000 in 200 transactions. So the thing there is a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't know taxes because I didn't sell over $20,000. But that's not the case. You still owe taxes. It's just that nobody's reporting it to the IRS on your behalf. Like, it's your responsibility to do that. And if you don't, it's possible, that nobody ever finds out, but it's also possible that they do, and that would never be a good thing. And to make it even more confusing, some states now, like I want to say Vermont and Massachusetts, they have even their own thresholds for reporting, where Amazon and PayPal and those payment processors have to report it to the state. It's like in the hundreds of dollars. So it kind of depends where you are.
And that is that. Like, you guys, there's so much depth to all this too. Like, I didn't know about hardly any of this stuff until probably a good year ago. I started sitting down. I'm like, I want to know what my CPA is doing with my stuff when I give him all the paperwork he asked for. Then I had to get better at my own accounting. That's a whole different story. I'm sure I'm not the only one who struggles with that, right? Yeah, so this stuff is really, really beneficial just to have the knowledge of it. Even if you're not going to plan on doing all of the in-depth tax stuff yourself, you're going to pay a CPA to do it for you. It's still really helpful just to have the knowledge base of how the process works. And it's really going to help you start thinking more like an actual business too. I love this one. Somebody asked cash versus accrual accounting for resale business, pros and cons.
Pros and cons. I mean, typically for small businesses, I would go cash. I mean, the thing there, for retailers, it's usually going to be a hybrid method because it's cash basis for everything except for your inventory. And that's always been the recommended way to go. And from a tax standpoint, when you do it based on the cash method, you'll usually owe less in taxes, because if you're, I don't know about retail, but if you're invoicing people, on the accrual method, you would have to recognize that income when you invoice it. So you'd be paying taxes on money that you actually didn't get. I don't know if I made a lot of sense there, but I think cash is the way to go. But it depends on the business.
I would definitely agree with that. Second part to a previous question. Do you include, this gets into one of my favorite topics. I also did not know how much we're able to deduct as business owners until my CPA, the first year I had my CPA, I did my own taxes. This is before Amazon World, but I was self-employed doing massage therapy and fitness coaching. And at the end of the year, I did my taxes the basic way, and I owed a ton of money. And then I hired a CPA for the first year. And at the end of the year, I gave him the general stuff I was doing. And he's like, yeah, but what about your deductions? And he gave me a whole list of stuff I had no idea about. So this question kind of gets into that topic too. It's one of my favorites. Gas mileage, food, traveling. If I buy plane tickets to go to a conference, am I able to write 100% off of everything I do for my business? Let's open up the doors to that topic.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I say in general, you can deduct any expense incurred on behalf of your business, but there are some things that doesn't apply for. Like if you're outsourcing or something and you stop for lunch, that meal is probably not deductible, because you can usually only deduct meals when it's part of out-of-town travel, or if it's part of like a business meeting, with an employee or a partner or a client or something like that. So if you're just outsourcing, maybe with a friend or something, you stop at Wendy's, like you can't write that off. But if you're traveling, if you're sourcing in another city, that should be a legitimate write-off. If you're at a conference, that travel, that lodging, those meals should be deductible. Any mileage you incur for business, I mean, you can write off that business mileage. But with that, it's an either or. You can either write off your mileage, the business portion, or the actual expenses, the actual auto expenses that you incur, like your gas, your maintenance, registration, that type of stuff.
And especially for those that are doing retail-based arbitrage, thrift stores, all that stuff. For those of you that are putting on a lot of miles on that car, I can tell you firsthand, mileage is going to be definitely one of the best write-offs you can do. And it's a certain amount. Is it 57 cents, 56 cents per mile, somewhere in that range. They change it a little bit every year.
Yeah, it's usually in the 50s, but that is a big one, and it's one that people forget about. You know, I've done the same thing. I've asked people, hey, do you have your mileage? And they come back with their mileage, and you know, it shaves off, you know, a few thousand off their tax bill potentially.
Yeah, it can be huge. Like we bought Trista's car January 1st of 2018. So I was really happy because we put a lot of money. That one was specifically pretty much for the business. And we put on, I don't even know, it must have been 30 or 40,000 miles on that car last year. Yeah, that's going to be a nice little chunk of change we get to save on that. Yes, that gets into, somebody mentioned Everlance. Everlance and Mile IQ are two apps that I've used both. They're both great. I don't have personal preference over one or the other. You can try both out, see which one you like. So when you're tracking mileage, instead of having to sit there and like write your actual miles down on your phone or like physical paper, these apps they work like a GPS. You hit start and it tracks everywhere that you go, and then you hit stop and it keeps a log for you, so you can have that data pretty much at a click of a button for your CPA.
Yeah, and anything you can automate, especially with mileage, those are fantastic to have.
Yeah. Somebody asked and this is gonna, I know this is gonna vary state to state how in depth their taxes are. In general, ballpark number, how much does the CPA cost? Is it more on a monthly basis, a yearly basis? And I know there's different package options for a lot of them. Like some of them, you can pay them for a whole month or I'm sorry, a whole year, and they're on call for whatever you need. And then there's other ones that will you pay one time a year, they do your taxes, and you're done.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few people, like, they kind of have that package deal with me, and they have my cell number, and they can text me whenever and that sort of thing. But if you're just looking at tax preparation, I mean, say you're a sole proprietor, I don't know, maybe you're married and you or your spouse has a W-2 job and you also have the reselling business. So you're going to have your normal personal return with a Schedule C for your business. I mean, a Schedule C return can cost anywhere between, you know, $300 and $600. I mean, there's CPAs out there who charge way more too. But that's kind of what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Give you guys ballpark that. Actually, you nailed it. Our first couple of years, they were a little bit easier taxes back then. We have a few more things going on now, but it was between $500 and $600. It was like $565, and a lot of them too for your first year. They'll give you a first year discount. So that's always something to ask about too. Is a first time discount. And once you establish a relationship with your CPA too, sometimes they work out different deals for you. But yeah, about $500 to $600 per year was what our first couple of years looked like.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have an LLC, like a multi-member LLC, that's going to be a whole separate tax form. Like that's a 1065 form. If you have an S corp, that's a separate form, and those alone can be, you know, $500, $600, $700, and then you still have your personal return on top of that, which could be, you know, $200 or $300.
Awesome. And making sure I didn't miss any of these big topics. Anything you want to fill the cracks in with? Any topics or anything I missed?
Yeah, just, I mean, before we get too far off of deductions, there is one I want to mention that's huge for 2018 going forward, and that's the Section 199A deduction. Does that ring any bells? So
I didn't do that much research yet.
So it's also called like the flow-through deduction. And I mean, it's something that was introduced with the tax changes, and it's basically a 20% deduction. 20% of your qualified business income, which is basically your net income, you get a 20% deduction. So if I net $100,000, I actually get to take off 20,000 more as a deduction.
That's insane. That was just recent.
It's going to be huge. I mean,
wow.
It's pretty massive.
Yeah, and I mean, I was expecting like 5% or something like that, but 20 is massive. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, it should be pretty straightforward for these types of businesses. I mean, there are a lot of stipulations and stuff for certain types of businesses, but in general, I mean, I just mention it because people, whether they do their own taxes or they have somebody else do their taxes, I guarantee there's tons of people who don't even know about it. And if they didn't see it on their taxes, they wouldn't even know. So when you do your taxes, just make sure you see exactly where you're getting that 199A deduction, because it's a big one.
So I hope you guys realize the benefit. Yes, it costs money. It's an expense, but this is why having a CPA is so beneficial, because if I was doing my own taxes, I would not know that piece of information and I'd be missing out on some cash. So this is why hiring a professional is beneficial. And I'm a huge fan of outsourcing, especially this year on this channel. I'm going to talk a lot more about getting more efficient in your business and your life, really. And outsourcing is one of them. A CPA is just like outsourcing, right? You're going to outsource a huge headache in your daily or yearly life by hiring a CPA. And they're on top of this stuff. Like Mark is going to read up on all these updates the second they come out. People like me, I don't actively sit down at the office one day and think, wow, I'm going to see what the recent updates are on tax stuff. This is why we have people like Mark.
Yeah, it is kind of ridiculous what some of that stuff that makes us excited.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with my massage therapy background. I did massage therapy for 6 years full time and then a few years part time. And I read medical stuff like in my spare time because I'm an anatomy nerd. I love it. Like we got to see an update on our baby that's on the way. Yesterday we had the 20-week update, and we got to see like the bones in the arm and the hand and all that stuff. And the second that the two bones lit up, I'm like, oh, it's the ulna and radius. And the doc was like, oh yeah, you know some anatomy stuff. I'm like, kind of. I'm one of those weirdos. I just read up on it. So we all have our own little things that we keep up on.
Yeah, I should ask you. I get this pain in my shoulder. I should ask you about it. Get a deep tissue massage or something.
Well, here's the most common thing that happened. I'd get these big burly like football player guys that would come in because I specialize in injury recovery, trigger point therapy, deep tissue, all that kind of stuff. I just love like the sports medicine side of it rather than just like the relaxation. So I did a lot of like active mobility work and stuff. I get these football players and athletes that would come in like, oh yeah, I came in and I hurt my rotator cuff. I love that because I asked them which one. And most people don't know you have 4 different muscle groups that make up your rotator cuff. And so we get a lot of people that's like, oh yeah, it's this one. I don't know. I always thought that was kind of funny because the look on their face when they're like, oh, there's not one.
Right.
Yeah, hit me up. I can help. I can't diagnose as a massage therapist, but I can help you pinpoint what might be going on.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, this is another topic too I love. Same line as deductions, especially when you first start out. You're going to work out of your house. Okay. So like for us, a lot of people don't know this because a lot of people see like the warehouse that we have now, but they forget that it's all documented on our vlogs and our YouTube channel. Go look. We worked out of our garage and our spare bedroom for the first 2 years. Well, not really. I mean, it trickled into the kitchen and the living room on some shipments, but we worked out of our house, and a lot of you are in that same spot. So when it comes to working out of your house, can you start to list off some basics on what they're able to write off? Because there were some ones in there that our CPA gave us that we're able to write off, which kind of shocked me.
Yeah, that's another one that someone will send me all their stuff and I'll do their tax return and I'll be like, hey, don't you work out of your house because they're missing a huge deduction. You know, you have a lot of shared personal and business expenses when you're working out of your house. So those are all accounted for through the home office deduction. And well, I shouldn't say all of them, but many of them you account for with the home office deduction. And there's 2 different methods you can use. You can use the regular method or the simplified method. So with the regular method, it actually takes into account all of your bills, your utilities, your mortgage interest, your property taxes, and then it looks at the proportion of your office to your home, and then it takes that percentage and basically multiplies it by all those expenses, and that's basically how you calculate it. Or if that's too much of a hassle, you can just use the simplified method, where you basically just get $5 per square foot up to 300 square feet. So that one caps out at $1,500. So for a lot of people, the regular method is going to be a lot more beneficial But for some people, the simplified might be more beneficial. But those are just two things to remember and to make sure that you are optimizing, because you can use whichever one is better for you.
Yeah, it really is amazing too. Like when I found out I was able to write off part of my cell phone bill, when I was doing massage therapy, I had actually converted one of our bedrooms into a massage studio. So I had my table and everything set up in there, and I'd have clients come to the house. We're in a really weird small town where we're one of the only cities, we're not even big enough to be considered a city, but we're in one of the only cities in the US that we require 0 business license for any business in town. Crazy, wow. Right? Like you can legit just go rent space downtown and start any business you want. No license required, which can be a little scary. So when it comes to having a home office, we have 0 regulations, 0 permits, nothing is needed. So I started this little massage studio. And the first year I went and did my taxes with my CPA, he asked me, how much are you paying on your utilities? My utilities? What are you talking about? Like, I have massage clients. Like I write off my massage oils, my electricity was one of them he mentioned. And then when he's brought up water, he's like, you wash the sheets, don't you? And it clicked. I'm like, holy crap. Yeah, I have to use the water to be able to wash these sheets every single day. And it just opened up this world of write-offs we're able to do. So having that knowledge base is really, really beneficial in your home setup. And then when you upgrade and have like a warehouse, obviously the warehouse is dedicated just for business. And so we get to write off the warehouse now. Mileage to the warehouse and back is going to count. Like it's cool what you're able to do as a business owner once you get into it.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing I should mention that are often outside the home office deduction, like you said, are your cell phone, your internet. So I mean, if you're using your internet or your cell phone 70% of the time for business, I mean, you can basically write off 70% of that bill.
Which is easy because we know all of the Amazon sellers are refreshing their app every 5 minutes all day. Easily 75% right there. All right. So if you guys got any last minute questions, drop those below. Man, I think you covered almost every topic there is when it comes to taxes. As you guys can see, there's a lot to this. And I love Mark because one, he's one of the only people that's covering in-depth level of stuff when it comes to these topics. Obviously he's certified, so he's allowed to. So I would definitely recommend that you give Mark a follow over on his Instagram account, Not Your Dad CPA. All of his stuff on the recording will be linked below in the description. But he's just super laid back. You guys know this is how the channel is. Like, you guys get to see my mess and I don't care. Like, we're super laid back. And Mark's just been a great content creator because he's been getting a lot more into the stories mode and answering questions in there, which has been awesome. Yeah, cell phone, because you're taking pictures with your phone. I know a lot of eBay people, I still do it. I take pictures with my phone, navigating your GPS, phone calls, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that cell phone is a huge one. Can I write off? Ooh, that's a good one. Can I write off a laptop or iPad on my taxes if it's used for reselling?
Yes, is the short answer.
I can imagine that gets into a little gray area. Like, nothing to do with reselling, but if you're a student, are you able to write off a computer purchase? I don't know why that just crossed my mind.
Not typically.
Okay.
But I should clarify. So, I mean, with a lot of things like that, like if you buy a big piece of equipment, usually you're supposed to capitalize it, which means you have to treat it as an asset. You can't deduct it, and then you have to depreciate it over time. So take those deductions over time. That could be the case with a laptop, but the IRS gives a $2,500 de minimis safe harbor threshold, they call it. So they're basically saying if your purchase is under $2,500, you can just expense it. So if you buy a laptop and let's say you use it 100% for your job, and it's less than $2,500, you can just deduct it. That's the way to go.
It amazes me the level of memorizing you must have to do. Like, you just know this stuff, right? Like, no hesitation. It blows my mind. I guess it's the same thing as like massage therapy school. Like I had to memorize like the human body, right? It was like on our test, we were required to memorize over 400 different muscles.
Wow.
And of course, you got the skeletal system within that, endocrine system, all that kind of stuff. So I guess it's like the same methodology between memorizing, but yours is all taxes. Like it blows my mind. I can't memorize any of that stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much out there that I still have to research. I mean, a lot of this stuff is the basics. I just repeat all day, so I can pull it out.
Mm-hmm. Somebody asked, do you get a 1099 if you did more than 200 transactions but less than $20,000?
No, I'm pretty sure it's and. It has to be both.
Yep. And that's for both Amazon and eBay. Again, I don't do Poshmark, so I don't know what the Poshmark answer for that one would be. I'm assuming they would stay in line because it's all online sales. They would stay in line with it. If anyone does know the for sure answer, just put it in the comments too. That's a good question. So going back to home deductions, does that also include an apartment or only if you own a home?
No, like you can deduct your rent too. So like a lot of my California clients, instead of having them use the simplified office method, deduction, home office deduction method, which caps, if they're paying $30,000 a year in rent, for a like 1 or 2 bedroom apartment or whatever, we're going to take, if their home office is 30% of the space, we're going to take 30% of that 30,000 and deduct it as part of the home office deduction. And that's a huge chunk for some of those California sellers.
That's massive. And it's the same thing for us too. We actually don't own a home yet. We're saving up for our first one right now. So we just rent out of a duplex. We partially haven't moved yet because we got a sick deal on our rent for this place and it hasn't gone up yet. We probably out of our entire city have the lowest rent out of anyone in town. And I'm just, until they raise it, we're just chilling where we're at right now. But same thing, like we just have a duplex we rent and we get to write off that portion of the rent. Of course you can't do 100%, but unless you converted your whole house into like this business center.
Right. Well, after they see this video, it's going up.
I know, right? They're all gonna go chase it down now. If I get a letter next month saying it goes up, dang it. Awesome. So you guys liking this info so far? I know for some people you're not quite there. It's just going to be a lot of over your head stuff. So come back and rewatch this as you feel fit. And the thing I've learned about these types of videos where there's a lot of content put into it is you can watch this again in a month and you might get something different out of it because you're in a different place in your business, a different state of mind. You might get something different each time that you watch this. And also, would you like to see more content where we're interviewing, well, not really an interview, but bringing on more guest speakers like Mark, who specialize in certain things within the online world? Love it. And the yellow chair puts it over the top. It's weird. It's like technically a neon green, but it shows up yellow on the video. It's weird. Yeah, this place is a disaster today. We're deep cleaning. My Goodwill receipts don't say specific items. It just says yellow tag $199. Can I still use it for tax purposes?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I've never seen the IRS come after somebody for like one of their thrift store purchases.
Yeah. And also I'll put in there too, like if you're sending in, this isn't tax related, but I will say on that note, if you're sending in Goodwill items or thrift store finds or Goodwill stuff to Amazon and Amazon comes at you and says, we would need our invoice, a proof of purchase. If you get an inauthentic claim or an IP claim or anything like that, those receipts are not going to hold up. So it's a very risky way to do your business that way. It used to not be that way. I used to send Goodwill stuff and all that kind of stuff, no problem all the time. Amazon was not strict on a lot of their policies, but obviously brand restrictions and all that kind of stuff got put into play. But as far as the eBay side, I've no issues there. So I would definitely agree. So it's not really on the tax specific side, but that's just like an Amazon caution thing. So just because you guys see people sourcing at Goodwills, just remember they're not sending it to Amazon all the time. Even now, I'm right now I'm editing a Goodwill video, and it was all Goodwill sourcing, but it's all going to eBay. That's just my personal preference now. Do you sell on eBay as well, or talk more about your business too? Because I know you do a little bit of private label.
Yeah, I mainly do private label on Amazon. I mean, I'll sell something on eBay occasionally, but I don't do it as a business.
Okay. So do you mind covering like how many SKUs do you have? Are you focusing on like one brand and multiple SKUs? I'm a little more curious about you as a seller as well.
Right. Yeah. So right now, so I do it with a friend, a partner, and I think we're coming up on like 2 years. But we just have one brand. I think 8 SKUs right now. We just added a couple of them, and we sell like camping and hiking gear, utensils and stuff, and it's just a side thing. Trying to build it while I build my CPA. Whichever one wins is the one I'm going to go with.
That's awesome, man. I love it. And this is what I love about Mark too. Like he's in the trenches with us. Because a lot of CPAs are like, oh yeah, Amazon, I kind of know about it. They might go to Google and like, oh yeah, I could do your tax return. It's a little scary with that. So people like Mark are definitely the ones I recommend. Gonti asks, can you please ask about the P&L statements preparations?
Yeah, I mean, so if you use QuickBooks or GoDaddy or any type of bookkeeping software, if all of your transactions are properly categorized, it's pretty easy to go in there and click a button and run a P&L or a profit and loss report for the year. And you can use that to prepare your taxes. You can give it to your tax preparer to prepare your taxes, and that should be really helpful. But even after you have that, there's still some things you'll add in, like you'll add in the mileage, you'll add in the home office deduction. Maybe you didn't put in the cost of goods sold correctly, so they could help you adjust that on your tax return. But it is helpful to have and pretty easy to generate.
Awesome. Real quick, Brandon said it's good content, but I would love to hear what you do personally for state tax stuff, focused on your state only. So you guys will never hear me talk about my personal tax situations because one, my state is not like you're going to have to go through a different process than what I go through. So it's pointless for me to cover what I personally do in a lot of cases with tax stuff. And also I'm in Oregon. We don't have sales tax. So that makes it pretty easy for me in my state. One of the rare few. That's also why we have we're in Nike headquarters, so we get a lot of people coming to town and we go out sourcing. They're like, we got 4 or 5 Nike outlets around here, sales tax free, which sucks when I travel because I forget other states have sales tax, which is just like a normal thing there. So I'm like, what do you mean I have to pay an extra 8%?
Yeah.
Ooh, this is a good one too. How do you source a good CPA? I know nothing about taxes, so I'd be handing everything over and just letting them do their thing. I just want to know that they know online business side of taxes. So if somebody's going to go out and look for maybe a local CPA, not work with one virtually like yourself. By the way, if you guys need a CPA, I happen to have one right in front of me who knows his shit. So he's a good one to look for. And I'll have all of his info and email and all that kind of stuff down the link below or description below. So if somebody's going to go hunt down a local CPA that they want to work with face to face, is there some basic questions they can ask? I know a lot of CPAs will do a free consult, so you can just sit down for like 15 minutes, maybe over the phone or in person. What questions should they be asking to see if that's going to be a right fit?
Yeah, I mean, there's some good questions you can ask. I mean, you want to see what they charge. You want to see if they charge like a fixed rate, or if it's an hourly rate, or if it's per form or something like that. You want to see if they're familiar with an inventory-based business. Even if they're not familiar with like Amazon, if they're familiar with an inventory-based business, they should be able to do a decent job. What else? I do have a list of good questions to ask. It's not in front of me, but I mean, you just want to be able to gauge if they're even willing to take your questions. A lot of people, they just want you to drop off their stuff and they'll return it, but they don't really feel like they have time to sit down with you and review your tax return or review your questions with you. So you want to, I mean, just getting them to agree to like talk to you, to have that sort of like mini interview says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just want to determine that, you know, you mesh with that person and that you feel like they care about your situation overall.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I love the answer to this next question. Can I write off like the expense of my tax return or my CPA? So let's say I get a CPA, do my taxes, I pay him $600. Can I write that off?
Yeah, mostly. Well, it depends. It depends. Like if it's, you can write off the business portion. So if your tax return is 100% business, say it's your a 1065 partnership return, that's 100% deductible. But if you have a Schedule C, you know, that's together with your personal return. So if it costs you, you know, $300, you know, maybe 150 or 200 of that is deductible on your business.
Yep. All right, sweet. Well, we want to respect Mark's time. We are at our hour. I want to thank Mark for coming on here, first of all, take an hour of his time, especially because he's an hour ahead. So it's getting to be late his time. So go spend some time with the fam. Thank you for tuning in. But aside from that, I want to bring to the table something which I'm excited about. So a lot of people don't know, over the last several weeks, I was deep diving into a new course chock full of content. And when Mark first hit me up and he's like, hey, I'm going to put together this tax course, this guide for resellers, and I want you to check it out. I'm like, okay, cool. It's going to be this little like download my PDF. It's going to have like 5 bullet points. And then like, that's the thing, right? Because that's what a lot of people do, right? So Mark hit me up and I think I blew you off for like several weeks. I'm like, okay, I'll get to it. And then finally I'm like, all right, let me just sit down, see what this guy has to offer. Little did I know, it was like 30 videos that was not like this little like 5-minute segment. Like this was in depth. And I thought I had a basic understanding of even just like business structures, and Mark covered A to Z, like very in depth. And so I took a lot out of that. I learned a lot. So Mark is doing a special. Actually, we're down to 24 hours left of this deal. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark real quick. You want to just run through what you have to offer and what inspired you to put this together, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's funny. I got the text from you, and you're like, "Holy crap, this is beef."
I was honestly like, I'm not saying this as like an affiliate, but just as like an end user, I was blown away at how in depth it was. I did not expect like 30 videos covering every single topic in depth. Like, you guys want a perspective. We covered like the general topic on many different things on this show right now. Mark takes each of those and goes deep on each one. So if you really want to get deeper into this, you've got to check out what he's got.
But not so deep that it confuses you.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's all visual too, which is what I loved. It wasn't just you talking to a camera the whole time. There's a lot of visuals put up onto the screen. So as he's explaining, you get to see a visual of how it's broken down. So it's very easy to follow.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, like, I started getting a lot of questions, and eventually, instead of just giving people the same answers every day on email, I decided to, first I wrote an ebook. So I have an ebook called Reseller Finance, and it covers a lot of this stuff. But then I finally decided to do this course where I talk about all this stuff and more and go deeper as well. And I mean, it just covers everything from basic tax law to all the different deductions you can take, to, you know, how to clean up a tax mess, how to, you know, stay off the IRS's radar, and, you know, questions you should ask yourself when starting a business, and then just like the accounting foundation that supports it all. And I mean, really, in the beginning, I was like, how does taxes really connect to your overall business success and like happiness, you know? And I was like, is that a stretch? But really, the more I got into it, it's not, because taxes, I mean, everybody has to pay taxes. And for so many people, it's just like this source of so much anxiety and confusion and stress. And like in this course, I just talk about all this stuff, and I talk about why you don't have to be worried. You know, like if you just educate yourself a little bit, you can take all that energy that used to be spent or eaten up by this anxiety, and you can put it into your business, and it really does like lift this cloud from from over you and your business, and you can take it to the next level, and that's really what it's all about. So yeah, I mean, so with this course, it's 5 modules. Each one has a few different videos, and the thing here is once you enroll, there's no like annual fee. Like you're in, and I'm going to continue to update these modules because tax stuff changes all the time. And if I just put this course out there and let it float out there on the internet, like it would be irrelevant in less than a year. But I'm going to continue to update it. I have a Facebook group where I'm going to also do live Q&As associated with each module. So I mean, this is like so not me. Like I'm just a CPA. I'm not a salesperson, but it really does have a ton of value. And like he's not joking. Like I just launched it a week ago. There's one more day of this half off price. Tomorrow it's I guess tomorrow at midnight it's going to go up for the rest of January, and then it's going to go up again. So I don't think it'll ever be this low again. So that's it in a nutshell, I guess.
I love it, man. And I love that you brought up like you're not a salesman, so it's weird for you to like present something,
Yeah,
which totally fits in with this channel because I don't run like sales funnels. I'm not a marketer. Like my audience knows if I'm gonna sell you guys something, like here's what it is, here's what it costs. Do you want in? If not, cool. Watch the next video. It's all free content on here. But if you want more value, then of course you got to pay to play in some cases. So like Mark said, 24 hours tomorrow, which is Wednesday at midnight, the price is going to go back up, and it's going to go up 2 more times after that. He's got a tier structure he's working on. So $149 get you access to everything. Like there's your sales funnel, right? No marketing needs to be done here. And obviously you guys saw the level of value and knowledge that he has to bring to the table. So if you got a lot out of this free version, wait till you see the like crazy lineup of those 5 modules that you got. So I just dropped the link over in the live chat. And if you're watching the recording, it is going to be in the description below. Like I said, 24 hours. You can't email me on Thursday morning saying, hey, Chaz, I want in at that price. It's not going to happen. Like it has to be in the next 24 hours. So give that a shot. If it is afterwards and you want in on it, then you can just email me directly and we'll see what price tier that it's bumped up to. But I've absolutely loved the content. I've taken a lot out of it too. And I haven't even finished the whole thing yet, right? It's like, it's a good amount of videos. So I'm taking them in bite-sized chunks, but it's been great. Yeah, the ebook is included with your course, correct?
It's not included, but it's only like $13.
Okay. Yeah. So $13. And that's a tax write-off, by the way, guys.
Oh yeah. It's all tax deductible.
So we're just talking about deductions. Like what better deduction than to learn more about deductions? You get to deduct that. Totally. Pretty cool stuff. And then with that as well, are you going to be, we didn't talk about this beforehand, the 25% extra?
Yeah, I mean, at least for the, yeah. That's what I'm doing right now.
Okay, so we'll throw it out there as well. So if you want, because some of you asked in the questions in the comments, if you want to use Mark as your tax guy, obviously he knows his stuff. He's offering an extra 25% off if you enroll. Of course, this is with the next 24 hours with that special price for us. So that's something that you can email him about, and it's on the. You'll see it pop up on the sales page. Aside from that, what state are you in? I love this answer that's coming up.
So I just moved to Utah, actually. I was in Michigan for 5 years, and then I went and lived in Nicaragua for a year, and then moved back to, well, not back to, but moved to Utah just a few months ago.
Which is awesome because I'm going to be in Salt Lake City starting tomorrow. And I get to meet this guy on Thursday. You're coming out, right?
I'll be there.
Awesome, man. I'm excited. So if you don't know, I'm going to be in Salt Lake City from when, well, I get in tomorrow night at like 8 o'clock. So Wednesday through Sunday, I'm going to be in Salt Lake City. Thursday night at 5, I think it was 5:30. Forgot my own meetup time. 5:30, whatever Mountain Time, right?
Yep.
Yeah, 5:30 Mountain Time is going to be the official Resellers Meetup that I'm hosting with my co-host, which she's not on here right now, but Ashley from Hustle at Home Mom is going to be there. Mark's going to be there. It's going to be a blast. We've already got like 20, 25 people registered. So I'll also put the RSVP link to the Facebook page down below. If by chance you catch this in time and you want to come out in your Salt Lake City, it's open invite. Would love to have you guys. So I'm excited to get together and meet this guy.
You're buying, right?
I'm buying. It's on me. It's a tax write-off, right?
Yeah, I think it could be. I think you could argue that.
All right. It's one giant business meeting.
Totally.
All right, sweet. I love it. Thank you so much again, Mark. If you guys want to get in on that 24-hour special, do it now. It's going to be well worth your time and well worth the money that you invest into it. But aside from that, you guys have an amazing evening, and we will catch you for the next show.